we want to talk about another use case, Andy?
Sure. So yeah, this is a second use case of an influencer. It's based on a real story we had with a client where a type of like this was sent to the legal team with the question, can you please draft us a privacy policy for our social media presence? And then the legal team looked at it, and we're going to look at it. It's not this case, but we kind of like created a new one as an example. So that's the social media presence, and you see it, requires the typical disclosures you need on a social media presence. And then we have a look at this post.
Hello, I'm Rob Newman, Global Chair of Reed Smith's Emerging Technologies practice. At Reed Smith, our Emerging Technologies team includes nearly 350 lawyers across the United States, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Together, we help organizations navigate both today's technology landscape and what comes next. The rapid evolution of technology is transforming business models and creating new opportunities, but also new legal risks. Our team works closely with clients to implement cutting-edge technology and data strategies that are globally compliant and financially sound. We bring together deep legal knowledge across a wide spectrum of technology and data-related services. Our lawyers advise on compliance, regulatory counseling, disputes and class action defense, and technology-driven transactions. Our work spans critical areas such as artificial intelligence, data governance, privacy and security, digital technologies including ad tech, fintech, and medtech, incident response, investigations, and complex technology transactions, and outsourcing. Combined with our industry-leading practices in healthcare, entertainment, digital media, and advertising, we help clients navigate the full legal landscape of emerging technologies. At Reed Smith, we combine legal insight, industry knowledge, and global reach to help our clients succeed in an increasingly data-driven world.
All right, so we have one more swag. Yeah? Question, was this AI created or not?
Yes.
Yeah, you're back there. Yeah? Okay, swag for the gentleman with the glasses. We have one more person. You put your finger up, your hand up as well. Gentleman?
I didn't approve that.
So this is Rob himself. Was it AI?
It was. It is me, but I sound a little better.
Yeah, so it's not bad. Yeah, the sound is different.
It sounds different.
Yeah. So that was this when we go back to this screenshot of the social media presence. So the legal team got this at our client, and they watched this and said, "Hey, hang on, this is AI." And then the marketing team said, "Oh yeah, this is like complete AI based influencer social media profile. So nothing's real in there. This is all automated. This person, well, we called this person. There was the name was Lucy, copied from another influencer, a real influencer in the same business area like that company was doing. So they copied the real name of a real influencer, and said, yeah, that's pretty cool, and it's all automated, and we don't have to do anything. It answers to comments, it posts stuff. We can say how often. It creates content, so it also created this content. We took some picture from the internet and then created this video, and so this is how it got to the legal team. And then of course the question is what went wrong. I mean, it's not that it's not possible to do this, but certainly in this organization they didn't have the governance model that we were discussing today. I mean, what mainly went wrong is that the folks from the marketing team, they were not aware they didn't know that there was a process to get this approved. They didn't know all the steps that need to be taken. So the awareness was missing, the training was missing, and then also the policies, which convey or which are conveyed in the training. So that's an example of what steps need to be taken. And I mean, what are the risks? The legal risks. I mean, you could say, okay, I mean, what's the story? But this situation has a lot of legal risks. Starting with the trust one.
Right.
We don't have any indication that no banner that it's AI based. So users think it's real. The comments posted can be true or false. We have intellectual property issues with the photo here, and we have data protection issues with content copied and posted, marketing laws. So there's a whole host of legal problems that can arise here. Of course, if you do it properly and if you run through the process, it can be done in a compliant way, of course. It needs to be made transparent. Of course, like the Lucy name, for example, it can't be chosen, needs to be a different name. There needs to be constant monitoring on what's happening here. So it is possible to do it, but in this form, many legal risks.
And again, just going back to what are the commercial impacts of something like this, right? So AI influencers exist, and that's amazing, first of all, that we can have an entire industry that are AI avatars that are influencing others' decisions. But the key in a successful AI influencer is that there is transparency there. Everyone that's interacting or following or being influenced by that avatar knows. And that in itself, the fact that they know what it is that they are interacting with is what builds that trust. It's not, from like a principle standpoint, it's really not different than what we've already been dealing with respect to advertising and influencers, is that when you find out someone that you are following or you're listening to is not providing you with truthful or accurate information, that person is no longer someone that you can trust, right? Why would you continue to build a relationship with that? What good are their product recommendations or their insights anymore? Because 50% of the time, you don't know, if they are real or if they're not real. So again, the concept of transparency in the actual deployment is so important. The governance when it comes to that is making sure, as Andy said, everybody understands, like, these processes are in place so that at the end of the day, we're not eroding the product or what we're trying to put out there. And then in the, going back to the development of the tool, the governance in that is really important because your deployers are relying on your governance process in the tool to be able to help them with their own governance process. So if you didn't design your tool in a way where there is transparency into how the tool is working, or there are safeguards that are built in that your deployers can turn on and off, then they can't meet their own internal expectations or external expectations, right? So that whole process is important from start to finish. And I know internally we all know that and feel that because we are consumers of this technology. I think sometimes in the race to, again, innovate, for speed to market, sometimes that gets overlooked as this is a checkbox exercise. But this really is fundamental to the start, to the beginning, the middle, the finish. And one thing we didn't talk about in some of these cases is agentic AI, right? Agentic AI takes us as human beings another step away from being able to validate how it's working, right? Because now you have multiple steps in the way, and I kind of liken it to the show your work when you were in school, right? You can get to the right answer, but it doesn't mean you knew how to get to the right answer unless there's a way for me to check your work, right? So teachers would always say, like, that's great, got to the right answer, but I don't know if you guessed or you're right 4 out of 5 times, but what happens that one time you're wrong because you don't actually know how to get from like A, B, D to Z. You're just getting to Z. And all of these principles become even more important when you're deploying multiple agents that we don't necessarily have that same transparency into, right? So as these technologies continue to develop, which they will develop at incredible speed, starting with these fundamentals is, to me, increasingly important.
Great.
Any last words? Wrap up?
I was just going to say, just picking up what you're saying about disclosure, transparency, there's research out there that says already people are suspicious of AI, so it makes it even more important to then the explainability of it, the disclosures, explain what guardrails you might have in place, and not just saying powered by AI, but actually explaining what data you might be using, what guardrails are in place, and that's how you build trust, really.
All right, well, we have a couple minutes. If anyone has a question, there's a mic in the back. If you could go line up at the mic. I was asked to ask everyone to go to the mic so that we could hear you and everybody else can hear you as well.
And it's being recorded.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I should say this is being recorded. I think your questions are also being recorded. Just FYI. Disclaimer.
By asking you consent.
Okay, I have a question for Andreas. I'm Uni from NTV Media Tech Norway, and for European companies building AI in high-risk areas right now involving biometric data, any advice on how we should navigate the transition phase so we don't lose momentum globally while the AI Act is still settling?
If I could just try to repeat that to make sure. The question is there any, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there any advice for companies that are trying to manage the AI Act as it's in flux? Mm-hmm. What can they do to help that change management in that transition phase? Is that
you mean with the risk of changes coming up?
Yes, well, the AI Act is still settling, so navigating this phase while we develop AI in high-risk areas?
Yeah. Most of the changes planned to the AI Act are mainly to timing and a bit to being more precise. So we see organizations really get ready for the AI Act as it is at the moment, but with a view of being a bit flexible. But they're all getting ready. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, this is Kai. Yeah.
Can you put it up a bit louder?
Audible? Okay, I try to speak up. Yeah. This is Kai from Germany. I work on AI governance, and I do see a trend here. So you pointed out that AI governance is more than compliance, right? It's more the question of what we should do, yet we discuss it very often from a legal perspective. And look at the panel, it's lawyers, right? So we look at it from a legal perspective. How do we get out of this perspective? Because I see it with clients, they think about governance and then they want to pull in legal and lawyers, but I think that's a bottleneck and it's just one perspective at the matter. So how do we get out of this AI safety being discussed mostly from a lawyer's legal regulatory perspective and into kind of discussed where it matters, and that's where the engineering happens, that's where the models are being deployed, that's where the marketing folks sit in your example, and they don't have to wait for lawyers and legal to tell them that this is not a good idea in the first place. So how do we get to where it actually matters?
I feel like you've had a recording device in our boardrooms that I champion the exact same thought as you. It will only work if it's cross-functional. Of course, we're selfishly very interested in this topic, so we love having a seat at a table for something that's of key importance to the organisation. But I see this as an issue that's pervasive outside of AI governance. Data governance 101. If you lead it exclusively with a team of lawyers, you're forgetting about data quality, data accessibility, costs of storage, etc. And I think those themes can be applied more broadly. I don't have a solution for you, but I have a strong +1 that I agree with exactly where you're coming from.
Thanks.
I think we're at time.
Okay, last question.
Hi, how are you guys doing? I'm Chris from Boston, and I am actually scaling agent-to-agent trust right now. And my question really has to do with the TripAdvisor use cases, which is, you have addressed a bunch of problems within the organization, right? You have AI coming from these reviews and these things that seem to be externally generated, and you also definitely have defined that you have internal tools that you folks are using. So I'm curious to know what your pain points are from TripAdvisor's perspective. Like, what is your largest deployment issue? Is this an internal workflow problem, or is it an external? What's your pain points?
So a couple of factors. I'm happy. I've got time after this if you want to chat. If you want to chat outside. Yeah. This is an intentional part of the strategy. I'll keep it incredibly brief. We saw a lot of redundancy. We saw a lot of playing around and experimenting with tools that were doing the same things. That has cost implications, time, resource implications, because they're still going through the same process. That perhaps critically maybe slowed us down. Maybe that's part of the process though, working out what the best tool is here. So it's building focus in your AI strategy. That's incredibly important. And as Nikki says, it's moving at lightning speed, so that's a challenge.
So it's enterprise teams basically. It's
right.
Within the organization.
Right.
All right, cool.
Right.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.